I always used to love New Year's. Clean slate, fresh start, that whole thing. Savannah and I had a little tradition. We'd stay in, open a bottle of good wine, write down our goals for the year, and burn last year's regrets in the fireplace. Cheesy, I know, but it meant something to me, to both of us, or so I thought. But this year was different. Instead of a quiet night at home, we were at a friend of a friend's house somewhere outside of Seattle. It was one of those overly modern homes, all sharp corners, glass panels, open concept everything. Cold, impersonal, expensive. The kind of place where everything looked perfect but no one actually lived in it. Savannah said it was important we go. Her boss was going to be there, along with some of her team and a few good people to network with. That was her phrase. Not friends. Not family. People to network with. I didn't argue. Things between us had already been tense, and I figured showing up and playing the role of the supportive husband might smooth things over. Maybe I'd finally feel like we were still on the same team. But from the moment we walked in, I felt like an outsider. She greeted everyone like she belonged there. All cheek kisses and inside jokes. That high-pitched voice she only used when she wanted to impress someone. I stood behind her, smiled when appropriate, shook hands, and tried not to look like I was counting down the minutes until midnight. Then Jared walked in. I knew who he was before Savannah even introduced us. I'd seen his name pop up on her phone a few too many times lately. Jared from work, she'd said once when I asked. He's harmless, kind of a dork. Married, I think. Harmless. Yeah. He was tall, well-dressed, the kind of guy who looks like he runs marathons for fun and drinks black coffee from places that don't have menus. When Savannah introduced us, he gave me one of those handshakes where you squeeze just hard enough to assert something, but not hard enough to be called out on it. I played sports. I know what that handshake is. Good to finally meet you, Jared said, flashing a too-white smile. Save's told me a lot about you. Save. He called her Save. That wasn't her nickname. At least it wasn't one I ever used. The night dragged on. The house was full of people, most of them from Savannah's job marketing people, mostly. Loud, polished, always talking about campaigns and deliverables and whatever brand they were trying to make feel more authentic this quarter. I hovered near the drink table, nursed my whiskey, and tried not to look like a wallflower. But I kept catching glimpses of her. Savannah. She was in her element. Laughing, smiling, touching Jared's arm when he made a joke. And not just once. Every time he said something remotely funny, her hand would graze his forearm, or she'd lean in a little closer than necessary. The kind of body language that says, I'm here with someone, but I'm not really here with someone. I told myself I was imagining it, that it was just professional, that they were all friends and I was just being the weird, antisocial husband who didn't know how to be around her work crowd. I almost believed it. Almost. Then it happened. We were all sitting down for dinner. Long table, too many wine glasses, name cards none of us paid attention to. Jared ended up across from Savannah. I was next to her, half listening to someone on my left talk about skiing in Whistler. Mid-conversation, I saw Savannah lean across the table, laughing at something Jared said. It was a loud, open laugh, the kind I hadn't heard from her in months. And then, as casually as if it were muscle memory, she reached across and dabbed at his tie with a napkin. Oh no, you've got sauce, she said, wiping it gently. Slowly. Jared smiled, looking more amused than embarrassed. Guess I need a babysitter. That's when someone, I don't even remember who, chimed in from the other end of the table. Careful, Savannah. That looks like a thing. Laughter erupted. The kind of awkward, knowing laughter that people use when someone says something true, but they all pretend it's a joke. And Savannah, she laughed too. Loudly. Not nervously. Not guiltily. Just freely. Then, without missing a beat, she turned toward me and said, You're not going to do that thing where you get jealous again, are you? Like I was the punchline. The possessive husband. The insecure one. The problem. I didn't say anything. Just stared at my plate. My mouth went dry. I gave a tight smile, the kind you give when someone says something so disrespectful in public that calling them out would only make you look worse. A few minutes later, The mood had shifted back to whatever new topic was being tossed around the table. But I wasn't in it anymore. I was somewhere else. In my head. Replaying what she said. That tone. That again. Like I'd done something wrong for noticing the way she looked at him. Like I was the one making something out of nothing. Then the waiter showed up. I'll never forget the way he approached. Polite, quiet, deferential. He held out a small black velvet pouch, the kind jewelers use when they don't want the customer to feel like they're getting a receipt with their purchase. This was found in the restroom earlier, he said, placing it carefully on the table in front of me. We believe it may belong to you. At first, I didn't understand. I picked it up, unzipped it. Inside was my wedding ring. My blood ran cold. I hadn't worn it that night. I'd taken it off earlier while washing my hands back at our house. I left it on the little dish beside the sink, where I always did when I was shaving or washing up. I was in a rush before we left and figured I'd put it on in the car, but I forgot. I knew that. I remembered it clearly. There was no way I had it on me. No way it could have fallen out of a pocket or gotten mixed up with anything I brought. So how did it get here? I looked at Savannah. Her smile froze for half a second. Just a flicker, a glitch. Then she laughed and said, "That's not yours, is it? Weird. Probably someone else's." She waved it off like it was nothing. A mistake. A mix-up. But it wasn't. I knew exactly where I left that ring. I saw it in the dish in the bathroom drawer, right next to her bottle of Chanel and that little velvet scrunchie she never uses anymore. So how did it end up here, in this house, in this pouch, in the hands of a waiter who had no idea what kind of grenade he'd just dropped on our table? Simple. Someone took it. Someone moved it. Someone brought it. And there were only two people who had been in our bathroom that afternoon, me and Savannah. My chest tightened. My hands went cold. Everyone else kept eating, kept laughing, kept sipping their wine like nothing had happened. But inside, something had shifted. The kind of shift you don't come back from. Because the ring wasn't just a ring. It was a message, a breadcrumb, a piece of evidence that someone had touched something sacred, and then tossed it onto the table like a prop in a play they thought I didn't know I was in. And Savannah? She just went right back to talking to Jared. Like I wasn't even there. The drive home from that dinner was the quiet kind. The kind that hums with everything unsaid. Savannah scrolled through her phone in the passenger seat, face lit by the screen, swiping and tapping like she was too busy to notice me. Or maybe she just didn't care to. I kept my eyes on the road, both hands tight on the wheel, but my mind was miles away. I didn't ask about the ring. I didn't ask about Jared. I didn't ask who, exactly, had gone into our bathroom and plucked something so personal out of my drawer and thought it'd be funny, or strategic, to return it in the middle of a dinner party. No, I didn't say a word, because I wasn't in the mood for another deflection, or a quick pivot to how I was reading too much into things again. Instead, I was busy replaying everything I'd overlooked for the past few months. Like someone rewinding a tape in fast motion, scanning for the moment where the story broke. And man, there were so many breaks. First, it was small things. Things you'd barely notice if you weren't looking. The shift in how she said my name, quicker, flatter. The way she started closing the door when she took calls, even when she was just talking to her sister. Her phone, once left charging in the open, was suddenly always with her. Face down, on silent, locked the moment she stepped away. I'd ask her, casually, "Who was that?" When her phone buzzed at dinner. "Oh, just work," she'd say. Or, "Group chat with the girls." But the tone didn't match the words. And neither did the smirk I sometimes caught her trying to hide. Then there were the calendar changes. Savannah had always been organized, color-coded blocks for everything. Meetings, deadlines, errands, even hair appointments. I used to joke that she'd probably pencil in time to argue with me. But around late October, the blocks started shifting. Late meetings here and there. Overnight, team strategy retreats. Spontaneous gym classes at weird hours, often followed by long showers and a locked bathroom door. Once, I noticed her calendar had a client onboarding dinner scheduled for a Thursday night. But when I passed by her laptop the next day, the event had been edited to say, "Internal review, remote." like she'd covered her tracks and forgotten to log out. Another time, she said she had a team offsite in Portland. I offered to drive her to the airport. She hesitated, said it was already handled. When I asked for the name of the hotel, just to check if I had points there, no other reason, she snapped, "God, do you not trust me at all?" I dropped it. Of course I did. Or I wanted to. At the time, I still thought you were supposed to. There were other things, too, more subtle but just as loud once I started listening. She started coming home later. Not late enough to scream cheating, but late enough to be noticed. And always with a rehearsed excuse ready. Traffic. Meetings. Got caught up helping Jared with his deck. She said that last one a lot. Jared's deck. Jared's pitch. Jared's timeline. The man had more deliverables than a UPS driver, apparently. And every time she said his name, she said it like he was part of the air around her. Ever-present, impossible to escape, just something I'd have to live with. I should have trusted my gut. I remember one night in November, it was raining hard, cold and steady, the kind of Seattle evening that makes everything feel heavier. I was home from work early and figured I'd surprise her by making dinner. I even lit candles, trying to reset whatever had been slipping between us. She got home around 8:15. No warning, no texts, just walked in, coat damp, eyes tired. She saw the table and froze. "Oh," she said, "I didn't know you were doing all this." I tried to smile. Figured we could use a quiet night. "You okay?" She nodded quickly. "Yeah, just long day." Then she walked past me, straight to the bathroom. I followed a few minutes later, needing to grab something from the hallway. That's when I noticed it, her dress, tossed across the bed. And on it, faint but sharp, was the unmistakable scent of cologne. Not mine. It wasn't a brand I recognized. Spicier, darker, expensive, probably. I leaned in to be sure I wasn't imagining it. No, it was real. It clung to the fabric like a fingerprint. I didn't confront her. I just sat at the dinner table later, across from her, chewing chicken that now tasted like cardboard. The same thing happened again, a few weeks later. Different outfit, same smell. There were nights I'd hear her pull into the driveway and just sit there. 10, sometimes 15 minutes. No movement, no music, just silence. I started watching from the upstairs window, hidden behind the curtain. Sometimes she was on her phone. Sometimes just staring ahead like she was psyching herself up for something. One night I asked, "You okay? You were in the car for a while." She looked startled, then annoyed. "I was finishing a call. Is that okay with you?" I backed off. Again. Because that's what I'd started doing, convincing myself I was the problem. That I was being paranoid. That good husbands don't question their wives every time something feels off. That doubt was a betrayal in itself. I gaslit myself to protect the illusion. She was tired. She was busy. She was overwhelmed. I told myself all the things a loyal spouse is supposed to tell themselves when the red flags start piling up. But after that dinner party, after the napkin on Jared's tie and the public humiliation and the ring, something in me cracked. The drive home felt like it stretched forever. Rain tapped against the windshield like a metronome, steady and indifferent. Savannah didn't say much. Neither did I. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, tense, full of things neither of us had the courage to unpack. I glanced over at her at a stoplight. Her face was lit by her phone screen. She was smiling at something. "Everything okay?" I asked, my voice low. "Yep," she said quickly, locking her phone and tossing it into her purse. "Just replying to Jenna. She was asking about the wine we had." I nodded, but I knew it wasn't Jenna. She always smiled differently for Jared. With her eyes. When we finally pulled into the driveway, she barely waited for the car to stop before hopping out. "I'm gonna shower," she said, already walking away. I stayed behind in the car. Engine off. Rain still falling. My hands gripped the steering wheel like I needed something to hold me together. And in that moment, alone, soaked in headlights and disbelief, I finally stopped pretending. This wasn't in my head. This wasn't insecurity. This wasn't just a feeling. This was evidence. By the time I fell asleep that night, if you could even call it sleep, the knot in my chest had turned into something solid. Something sharp. I kept cycling between denial and certainty. One moment I'd think, maybe there's an explanation. Maybe I'm losing it. And the next I'd be back in that dinner party, watching Savannah wipe Jared's tie like she was wiping lipstick from a lover's mouth. Somewhere around 2:30 a.m. I gave up on sleep. I got up, walked downstairs, and paced in circles in the living room. Every detail of the last 3 months started to rearrange itself in my head. Patterns I had ignored snapped into place. And eventually I decided to stop guessing. She had fallen asleep with her phone on the nightstand, which wasn't like her. Normally it was face down, tucked under her pillow like she was guarding state secrets. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. I had a different plan. Her car keys were still in her purse by the door. I slipped them out and stepped outside into the cold. It was just past 3 a.m. The street was silent. One porch light flickered across the street. A raccoon scuttled under a bush when I opened the driver's side door. I didn't even know what I was looking for, but I found it anyway. The glove compartment was a mess. Gum wrappers, expired insurance cards, and at the bottom, a thin plastic badge attached to a lanyard. I held it up under the dome light. Hilton Bellevue, Executive Development Program. Underneath, in Sharpie, someone had written, Savannah Bell/room 802. My pulse went cold. She told me about this trip, the executive leadership training over a long weekend. Said it was a group workshop, team building, nothing special. She said the sessions were long, and there was barely time to leave the hotel. She even FaceTimed me once from the hotel bed. Hair wrapped in a towel, makeup off, pajamas on. I remember feeling weird about how she rushed the call. Said she was exhausted. Said she had a headache. Now I realized what that call really was. A decoy. I just sat there in her car, holding the badge, trying to breathe. The lanyard still had a faint smell to it. Cologne again. The same one from her dress that night after work drinks. It wasn't mine. Not even close. That morning, she woke up earlier than usual. I heard her moving around in the bathroom, blow-drying her hair, opening and closing drawers. She came downstairs in yoga pants and a windbreaker, keys in hand, sipping a smoothie. Going to spin, she said casually, adjusting her ponytail. Back by 10. I nodded. Drive safe. She kissed me on the cheek, barely, and was out the door. As soon as she pulled out of the driveway, I got in my car and headed toward Bellevue. I didn't have a full plan, just a fire in my chest and a need to know. I didn't want to guess anymore. I didn't want to keep living in the gray. The drive was about 25 minutes. Long enough for me to doubt everything I was doing, but not long enough to turn back. My palms were sweaty on the wheel. My jaw was locked tight. I could feel my heartbeat in my teeth. I pulled into the Hilton parking lot just after 8 a.m. The building looked harmless, modern, glassy, bland. But to me it looked like a crime scene. The lobby was empty except for a young woman at the front desk. She smiled politely. Good morning. How can I help you? I took a breath. I'm trying to reach my wife, I said, keeping my tone calm. Savannah Bell. She stayed here last weekend. Her smile dimmed slightly, but she nodded. Let me check. She typed something into the computer. I saw her eyes move subtly, reading something I couldn't see. She checked in Friday afternoon, the woman said, and checked out Sunday morning. Right? I said. Can I ask? Was she alone? She hesitated. I'm sorry. I'm not really allowed to. I know. I cut in gently. But this is important. Please. She looked down, then back at me. Her voice dropped. She checked in with a guest under a separate name. Brady. Jared Brady. Room 802. My stomach dropped. Not because it was unexpected, but because the lie was finally confirmed. The woman continued, almost whispering now. They requested no housekeeping, no disturbances. Checked out together early Sunday. That was it. That was the moment I stopped hoping it was all in my head. I thanked her quietly and walked out. Didn't yell. Didn't make a scene. I just left. Back in the car, I sat with my hands in my lap, staring at the steering wheel. Everything looked the same. Same traffic outside. Same trees swaying in the wind. Same dashboard lights blinking softly. But I wasn't the same. She hadn't just betrayed me. She'd planned it, protected it, repeated it. She called it executive training. And it was just not the kind you put on a resume. When I got home, Savannah was in the kitchen, back from her spin class, making coffee like it was just another Sunday. She smiled at me over her mug. "Want some?" I shook my head. "I'm good." We didn't talk for a while. I watched her, really watched her. The way she leaned on the counter, scrolling on her phone, probably texting him, probably making plans, probably laughing at me. She had no idea I knew. No idea the truth had slipped through her carefully stitched alibis. No idea her secret had a name and a room number. And in that moment, something changed in me. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to beg for the truth anymore, because I finally had it, and I was going to make her live with it. You learn a lot about someone when they realize they've lost control of the story. That Sunday afternoon, Savannah still didn't know what I knew. She thought we were coasting through another quiet weekend. I watched her move through the house like everything was fine, humming while folding laundry, making toast with almond butter, flipping through some magazines she probably didn't read. All of it felt rehearsed, plastic. I sat in the living room, hands folded, eyes fixed on the muted TV. But I wasn't watching. My brain kept flashing back to the hotel badge, the front desk clerk's face, the exact way she'd said his name. Brady, room 802, like a code I couldn't unhear. Savannah walked in and stood in front of me, holding her phone. "Hey," she said lightly. "My mom's asking if we're still coming up for dinner next weekend. What should I tell her?" That was it. That was the sentence that broke the dam. I turned off the TV and looked at her. Not just at her, into her, through her. "Don't bother," I said. "I won't be coming." Her brow furrowed. "Why not?" I stood up slowly. "Because I know Savannah." She blinked. "Know what?" I tilted my head slightly. "Hilton Bellevue, room 802. You and Jared. Last weekend." The silence was immediate. Her entire body stilled, not frozen in fear, but calculating. She wasn't shocked. Not really. She was figuring out her next move. "How?" she started but stopped. Her voice dipped an octave. "Did you follow me?" "No. You left your hotel badge in the glove box," I said, and then added, "along with your conscience, apparently." For a second, just 1 second, I saw something real flicker across her face. Shame? Guilt? Maybe. But it disappeared almost instantly, replaced by something colder. Defensive. Familiar. "You went through my car?" she said, eyebrows raised. "Are you serious right now?" I actually laughed. Couldn't help it. "That's what you're opening with? Me invading your privacy?" She crossed her arms, face hardening. "You don't get to turn this into some moral high ground just because you got nosy and found something you weren't supposed to." "Wasn't supposed to?" I repeated. "It was your hotel badge, Savannah. With his name, your handwriting, your room number. You're twisting this." "No," I said. "I'm finally seeing things clearly." She scoffed. "You always do this. You blow things up before asking for the full story. You go off a feeling, a look, and then you spiral." I stepped forward. "Then give me the full story. Right now. Walk me through what part of checked in together, requested no interruptions, shared a room is a misunderstanding." Her lips parted, closed, opened again. "You don't know everything. Then enlighten me." More silence. I waited. She exhaled, then turned away, pacing toward the kitchen. "It wasn't like that. It's not what you think." "Then what is it?" I said, my voice sharp. "Because you can't keep pretending I'm just imagining things. I've been quiet. I've given you the benefit of the doubt. And I watched you lie to my face again and again." She spun back around, frustration bubbling in her tone. "You don't get it. You never ask why. You just assume I'm some villain and you're the wounded husband." Okay, I said slowly. Why then? She opened her mouth, but again nothing came out. That's when I knew. There was no explanation, no redemption arc, no justifiable reason, just impulse and secrecy, dressed up in excuses that were still being drafted. So instead, she pivoted. I made a mistake, she said flatly. More than one, I replied. Her voice rose. You think I wanted this to happen? That I planned it? I've been under pressure at work and you've been distant. Always tired. Always distracted. I felt alone. There it is, I said. I made you do it. I didn't say that. But you meant it. She turned away again, gripping the edge of the counter like she needed something to hold her up. I didn't plan for it to go this far. How far did it go, Savannah? I asked quietly. Do you even know anymore? Her voice cracked a little when she said, It wasn't physical at first. I nodded. So it's emotional cheating then, followed by the physical. Got it. You don't understand what it's like to feel invisible, she said, her tone harder now. To come home every day and feel like you're just there, not seen, not heard. And your solution was to become someone else entirely? She didn't answer. I leaned against the wall, crossing my arms. You know what's wild? I could have handled the truth. If you'd come to me, said you were unhappy, said you were struggling, said you needed something more, I might have fought for us. But you didn't give me the chance. You made the decision for me. In secret. With him. She flinched. That's when the mask cracked again. I was scared, she said softly. Scared you wouldn't care. Or that you'd leave. You did that on your own. We stood there for a while in that awful quiet, the kind that fills up all the empty space in a room. She wiped her face with the sleeve of her sweatshirt, and when she spoke again, her voice was different, smaller, sadder, but still guarded. I'm not proud of it. I didn't respond. I don't even know how we got here, she added. I did. It wasn't one big betrayal. It was death by 1,000 deflections. Every time I asked a question and got a dismissive shrug. Every time I noticed a red flag and convinced myself it was pink. Every night she rolled over with her back to me, and I pretended not to feel the distance. You haven't apologized, I said. She blinked. I just said I'm not proud. Not being proud isn't the same as being sorry. Another long pause, and then came the real twist of the knife. Honestly, she said, you've always been so obsessed with control. Maybe I did this just to feel like I had some power for once. There it was, the bullet, wrapped in honesty. I stared at her for a long time, not in rage, not in sadness, just in clarity. You don't even feel guilty, I said. You just feel caught. She shook her head. That's not true. But it was, because she didn't cry for me. She cried for herself, for her reputation, her image, the crumbling house of mirrors she'd built with borrowed reflections of who she used to be. And still, even after everything, she clung to the narrative that this was about me not seeing her. But I saw her, and what I saw now was someone I no longer recognized. Someone who chose self-preservation over partnership, secrecy over honesty, Jared Brady over the man who married her when she had nothing but dreams and a second-hand couch. So I turned away, picked up my jacket, and headed for the door. Where are you going? She asked, panicked now. To breathe, I said, and to think. Please don't leave like this, she said. Let's talk it through. We can fix this. We won't fix anything if the only thing you're sorry about is getting caught. And with that, I walked out. The sun was setting. Cold air filled my lungs. For the first time in a long time, I felt something that almost resembled freedom. I didn't stay away for long, just long enough to clear my head. I parked in a grocery store lot down the road and sat there in silence with the windows rolled halfway down, trying to let the cold air burn through the fog in my chest. Everything inside me felt scrambled. Part rage, part relief, part disappointment? I'm not sure. I wasn't angry just because Savannah cheated. I was angry because she turned me into someone who needed proof, who had to snoop and doubt and check parking lot timestamps like some half-baked detective. That wasn't who I was. And it sure as hell wasn't who I wanted to be. But she'd made that version of me necessary. And now that the truth was out, I naively thought maybe we could be adults about it. That maybe, just maybe, she'd finally be honest. Own up to it. Let the cards fall where they needed to. But I hadn't accounted for something much worse than cheating. Reputation management. When I walked back in the house, the lights were low. Savannah was sitting on the edge of the couch, phone in her hand, laptop open beside her. She looked up, startled, like I'd walked in on her rehearsing a monologue. "I wasn't sure you'd come back tonight," she said. "I live here," I replied. "I mean, I didn't know if you needed space." I didn't answer. She stood up and crossed her arms, probably trying to look composed. "I think we should have a real conversation, not just yelling." I didn't yell. She paused. "Okay, then let's talk." But before I could say anything, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it quickly and flipped it over. I caught a name before the screen dimmed. Mom. And just like that, a part of the conversation clicked into place. "You told your mom?" I asked. She blinked. Yeah. I needed someone to talk to." "And what exactly did you tell her?" There was a beat of hesitation. Just enough to confirm what I already suspected. "I told her we're going through a rough patch," she said. "That you've been suspicious. That things got heated." I laughed. "So I'm the irrational one now?" She narrowed her eyes. "I didn't say that. You didn't have to. You framed the whole thing so you come out looking like the emotionally exhausted wife dealing with her controlling husband." "That's not fair." "No, what's not fair?" I said, stepping closer. "Is you sleeping with a coworker and then rewriting the story like I imagined it." She looked at the floor. "I didn't tell her that part." "Of course you didn't. Because that's what Savannah was doing now, version control. Crafting narratives. Spinning a new story before I even had time to catch my breath. I didn't even get to be the first one to process what happened. She'd already gone public. And she didn't stop with her mom. That night I checked my phone. Not because I was looking for drama, but because something felt off. My brother had texted earlier. "Hey man, everything okay? Just talk to save. You good? Talk to save." Savannah was making the rounds. Calling people. Planting seeds. I replied with a simple, "Did she tell you why she's worried about me?" He didn't answer right away. Later that night, I got another message from him. "She said you walked out. That you've been stressed. That there was a misunderstanding at some dinner party with some guy from work." Some guy. Jared Brady was now some guy. I stared at the message for a long time, my jaw tight. Savannah wasn't just spinning. She was prepping the battlefield. Getting ahead of the story so that when I told the truth, it would sound like a bitter exaggeration from the husband who couldn't take a joke. By morning, I found out she'd reached out to two of my friends. Left voicemails for both. She even messaged my mother, to tell her I'd been acting paranoid, and that she was really worried about my mental health. My mental health. That was her angle now. She wasn't defending herself. She was discrediting me. If I ever told the full story, she wanted people to already have doubts about me. Wanted them to say, "That's not like her." But yeah, he has seemed off lately. I confronted her in the kitchen. "You're telling people I'm unstable?" I asked, holding up my phone. She didn't deny it. "I told people you're under a lot of pressure. That this year's been hard on you." "That's not concern," I said. "That's insurance." She stepped back, hands raised. "I didn't ask for this to blow up." "Didn't ask for it?" I said. "Savannah, you detonated it." She rubbed her forehead. "I don't even know how to fix this." "You don't," I said, "because you're still trying to win. Even now." She sighed. "You know what? Say what you want to say. I know you're angry. Just get it out." But I wasn't angry anymore. I was exhausted. "You had every opportunity to be honest," I said. "Even after I caught you, even after you knew I knew, you still tried to twist it." I panicked. "No, you calculated," I replied. "There's a difference." She didn't answer, just stared at the floor like the pattern in the tile was suddenly fascinating. Then, the worst part, the most predictable part, came a few hours later. She sat me down like she was breaking some devastating news, with a soft voice, trembling hands, and her best imitation of vulnerability. "I need you to know something," she said. "That night at the party, Jared made a move on me." My stomach turned. "You're serious?" She nodded. "You walked away for a second, and he came over and said something inappropriate. Then he touched my back. I told him to stop, but—" "Savannah," I interrupted. "You wiped sauce off his tie." I was trying to de-escalate. I didn't want to make a scene. I shook my head slowly. "You laughed at his jokes, called me jealous. You turned me into the joke." "I didn't mean to." "You kissed his cheek before dinner," I said. Her eyes widened slightly. "Yeah," I continued. "I saw it. From across the room. You thought I wasn't looking." She opened her mouth, but no words came out. And that was when I realized how deep this went. It wasn't just cheating. It was performance. Image preservation. She needed to be the sympathetic one. The woman caught in something complicated. Not the woman who orchestrated a months-long affair and then played victim when the mirror cracked. I didn't say anything else that day. And to her credit, she stopped trying to talk to me after that. Maybe she realized the rewrites weren't sticking anymore. Maybe she finally saw that I'd stopped playing the role she wrote for me. Either way, I started packing a bag. A few days after the fallout, she left a letter on the kitchen table, handwritten, on the same paper she used for birthday notes. I read it once. No apology. Just excuses. She blamed work stress, burnout, and feeling invisible. But the line that ended any part of me still willing to listen was, "If you had paid more attention to me, maybe I wouldn't have needed to find it somewhere else." That wasn't remorse. That was deflection in ink. I folded the letter, placed it back on the table, and never spoke of it again. That was the day I started the paperwork. She didn't fight the divorce. Maybe she knew there was nothing left to defend. The last time I saw her was outside the courthouse. She nodded, like we were co-workers ending a meeting. I moved into a small place on the city's edge and adopted a dog, Max. I started running again, cooking, living. Months later, I met someone kind. We shared a lemon tart and some laughter. I didn't tell her my past. I didn't need to. My story now begins with choosing peace, choosing myself.